Owls and crows crave mice. When humans sleep in a wet place, they may get a pain in their waist that makes them feel half dead. But is this so for an eel? Up in a tree, humans get nervous and tremble with fear. But is this so for a monkey? Do any of these three know the correct place to live? Humans eat animals they feed with grain. Deer eat grass. Centipedes are eaten by snakes. And birds, like owls and crows, crave mice. Do any of these four know the correct sort of taste? Monkeys mate with other monkeys. Deer mix with other deer. And fish are at ease with other fish. Lady Li and Mao Xiang are found attractive by people. But when fish see them, they dive low. When birds see them, they fly high. And when deer see them, they run fast. Do any of these four know the correct kind of sexual desire? Owls and crows crave mice is the title assigned by Chinese tradition to this passage from a story in the Zhuangzi. Many stories from the Zhuangzi have such traditional titles, and some of them became common proverbs. The meanings of these proverbs typically still relate to the Zhuangzi story from which they came, but often focus on one particular message that may not fully reflect the story's complexity. As a proverb, owls and crows crave mice means different creatures, and specifically different people, have different preferences. It corresponds to English sayings like, "One man's meat is another man's poison." Accordingly, the passage can be understood, firstly, as a moral plea for tolerance. One should accept diversity rather than regard one's own preferences as universally valid. Contemporary philosophical readings of the story supply its apparent moral plea for tolerance with a larger theoretical framework. The central question, posed in three different ways, asks if any creature knows what is correct in any given matter. This is not just a moral, but an epistemological question. What can be known by whom? Focusing on this problem, a second reading of the story regards it as an introduction to the theory of knowledge of the Zhuangzi. There is some disagreement, however, about which specific theory of knowledge it expresses. Two main candidates are relativism and scepticism. In a relativist way, the story can be taken to say that, for instance, a wet place is the correct place to live relative to whatever lives there. In relation to the needs of eels, it is correct, but in relation to human physiology, it is not. Knowledge about what is correct is possible, but only relative to certain criteria. This position can be extended to more general relativist claims. Whatever is correct for some, but not for all. There is no such thing as universal truth. Truth is always relative to specific conditions and circumstances. If read in a skepticist way, the question, stated in three variations, appears merely rhetorical. It does not suggest, then, as a relativist would assume, that any of the different species can know what is correct, even if only correct for them and not for others. As a rhetorical question, it suggests instead that no one really knows, for instance, the correct place to live. Ultimately, knowledge, including relative knowledge, remains elusive. We are cognitively too limited to ever know anything for certain, not just about others, but also about ourselves. Philosophical reflections on knowledge are not restricted to the epistemological questions of what can be known, how, and by whom. Knowledge is not just an intellectual phenomenon. Turning from the Anglo-American to the continental philosophical tradition, other aspects of knowledge come to the fore. Knowledge is power. It has creative force. It distinguishes one way of life from others. Questions about knowledge become questions of existence. Accordingly, Owls and Crows Crave Mice can also be read, thirdly, as an existential allegory about perspectivism. The philosophy of the Zhuangzi has been compared to the thought of Friedrich Nietzsche, and particularly to his perspectivism. For Nietzsche, perspectivism meant that everything is subject to innumerable interpretations rather than having one universal meaning. He wrote, "Our needs, our drives, and what they affirm and negate interpret the world. Every drive is a kind of desire to rule. Each has its own perspective." In light of Nietzsche's perspectivism, owls eating mice is not just a matter of disinterestedly knowing what to eat. There is a drive, a life force, or a will to power at work in an owl that interprets a mouse differently from a human or a deer, namely as my food, and then devours it. Actual life is not about knowing the one meaning of something, but about the capacity to establish a specific perspective on the world and to make it a reality. Modern readings of Owls and Crows Crave Mice, according to relativism, scepticism, or perspectivism, make sense, but tend to ignore the story within which the passage occurs. It is part of a dialogue between a fictional Daoist master and a questioner. As is often the case in the Zhuangzi, their names are weird and ironic, like rap names. The master is called Wanjun, or King Kid, and the questioner is Nietzsche, or Tooth Gap. Tooth Gap asks King Kid if he knows of anything that everyone agrees is right. King Kid responds quite brashly, "How would I know that?" When Tooth Gap poses the Socratic question if he knows that he doesn't know, or if no one knows anything at all, King Kid repeats, "How would I know that?" To demonstrate his unwillingness to talk in terms of such knowledge, King Kid brings up the three examples of various species living, eating, and procreating in different ways without knowing what they do is correct or not. He declares that as far as he is concerned, debates about knowing correct moral values and right and wrong are Fanran Yao Luan, which translated into colloquial English means something like quite screwed up. King Kid stresses unmistakably, "How would I know how to debate such things?" Seen in this context, King Kid's primary concern is not epistemological. He is not so much interested in the intricacies of knowledge production as in avoiding the mental and social damage resulting from moralistic quarrels, resulting from different claims to know what kind of behavior is correct. By means of humor, the story questions the value of such quarrels. Not only the names of the master and student are funny, the images in the story are somewhat comical and grotesque as well. People living fearfully high up in trees, monkeys having sex, deer running away when they see two beauty queens. Such images, although bordering on the absurd, are used to illustrate the very issues most basic to our lives: procreation and feeding and housing oneself. Along with such cartoonish scenes, the human obsession with determining the correct way to do all these things looks rather silly. Animals take care of the basic needs of life instinctively in various ways and do not quarrel or preach about them. Humans, to the contrary, have created very serious moral regimes around these needs by means of philosophy and religion. They do not simply house and feed themselves and procreate, but claim that we need to know and ought to agree on what is correct in these matters. However, in practice, such knowledge and agreement has never been achieved. Paradoxically, the very attempt to create such knowledge and agreement leads to disagreement and conflict. Different people regard different ways of living, eating, and having sex as correct, and the more convinced they are that they know what is correct, the more entitled they may feel to enforce their presumed knowledge on others. Through a humorously framed critique, King Kid rejects taking part in the philosophical or religious quarrels about what everyone must know to be correct. These very human debates foster self-righteousness and make people judgmental. They breed fundamentalist ideas and behavior. The story of King Kid disengages readers from the temptation to think and talk in moralistic terms. This disengagement can relax one's own mind and, what is more, make for more relaxed engagement with others. A fourth way to read Owls and Crows Crave Mice is as a therapeutic tale, easing up a zealous quest for moral certainty.